The place now known as the Red Cave was once one of the most unforgiving regions of Ice Age Eastern Europe. A landscape defined by violent seasonal swings, relentless cold, and the constant tension between predators competing for survival. During the Pleistocene, the valley surrounding this cave was not a silent, empty wilderness, but a crossroads of powerful animals, each adapted to an environment capable of shifting from calm to lethal within hours. Winds raced through the ravines like blades. Snow layered the ground for most of the year, compacted into crystalline sheets that crackled under the weight of migrating herds. And above it all, the towering cliffs framed a sky that promised storms more often than shelter. But before we jump back in, drop a comment letting us know what time you're tuning in and where you're watching from. We love seeing how far our episodes are reaching. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing exciting topics here on the Primal Roots channel. Herds of bison, aurochs, woolly rhinoceroses, and massive steppe horses carved trails across the frozen plains, their migrations dictating where predators gathered and where humans dared to venture. To the Neanderthals who traversed these lands, every valley, every outcrop, every stream was part of a map learned through centuries of survival. Territories weren't simply physical spaces. They were memory, experience, and instinct combined. The Red Cave was one of the most contested locations of all. Its narrow entrance protected it from the worst winds, its interior remained dry during storms, and its depth allowed flames to burn without suffocating those within. But these same features made it incredibly valuable to predators as well, ensuring that any human who sought shelter inside walked into a space claimed by something else. The cave's reddish walls, colored by natural hematite deposits, were striking even in the dim light of distant torches. To modern researchers, the pigment is merely geological. To the Ice Age humans who first saw it, the deep tones suggested that life and death had soaked into the stone. The archaeological team that later excavated the site sensed this immediately. Layer after layer of sediment revealed a cycle of violence: crushed bones, dragged carcasses, tools snapped mid-battle, and dark patches of compacted earth stained by iron-rich residues. The evidence didn't point to a single tragic event, but to repeated confrontations. To understand how these scenes unfolded, one must return roughly 60,000 years, to a moment when a small Neanderthal band crossed that valley searching for temporary refuge. They were 10 individuals, adults hardened by constant travel, carrying fire-hardened spears and carefully knapped flint tools, juveniles learning the patterns of the land, and 2 children, protected within the group's center as the winds rose. Snow swept across the plain in diagonal waves, turning every breath into a cloud. The storm approaching from the west signaled danger. For Neanderthals, storms meant far more than discomfort. They meant a collapse in visibility, disorientation, and rapid drops in temperature that could freeze exposed skin within minutes. Reading the landscape was their greatest skill. Their survival depended on it. When the group spotted the cave's narrow opening halfway up a rocky slope, its shape and placement told them everything they needed to know. No flooding risk, enough depth for warmth, and walls that reflected heat effectively. It looked safe. It felt like a blessing, but they weren't the first ones to think so. Long before humans dared approach, the cavern had served as a den for one of the most formidable predators of the Ice Age, Pachycracuta brevirostris, the giant cave hyena. This was not a slightly larger version of modern hyenas. It was a beast of staggering power, reaching up to 120 kilograms with a massive chest, shortened muzzle built for bone-crushing pressure, and forelimbs strong enough to drag carcasses larger than itself. This creature ruled the region's caves with absolute dominance. Its bite force could shatter the femur of a rhino calf. Its senses were so sharp that it could track wounded prey for miles. And its social structure, built around coordinated packs, made it one of the most efficient predators on the continent. Humans knew this species well. They had encountered its dens before. They carried scars earned in close-range battles with animals that could overpower even the strongest hunter. Yet on that night, pressed by a storm, their survival instincts conflicted with their caution. The entrance was too inviting to ignore. They stepped inside. The first thing they noticed was the silence. Their torch flames flickered violently as the wind chased them into the darkness, illuminating jagged shadows along the walls. The air smelled of minerals and moisture, but beneath that, something sharper lingered. Something musky, sour, and unmistakably predatory. As their eyes adjusted, the group spread out cautiously, examining the floor and inspecting the walls for signs of danger. They found them almost immediately. Scratches, deep, parallel, and curved, cut across the stone. Not the marks of a distracted human hand, but the raking pattern of claws built for gripping flesh. Fragmented bones lay scattered in clusters, some belonging to herbivores, others shockingly human-like. These bones told a story of crushing, splintering, and gnawing. They bore the unmistakable semicircular impressions of a jaw capable of cracking marrow-rich sections with ease. One of the adults knelt, ran his fingers along the grooves, and stiffened. The message was clear. This cave was not abandoned. Then came the scent, stronger now, drifting through the narrow entrance like a warning. It struck the group with instant recognition, the pungent, acidic smell of Pachecracuta territory. No Neanderthal forgot that smell. It represented ancient competition, ancestral fear, and the constant reminder that humans were not the only hunters walking the Ice Age world. Before they could retreat, movement appeared at the mouth of the cave. 2 gleaming eyes, then 4, then more. 3 female hyenas entered first, flanking the narrow passage with calculated precision. Their bodies were wide, muscular, and silent as shadows, and behind them came the male, larger than all of them, shoulders nearly brushing the stone as he stepped forward. His coat was mottled with dark patches, his jaw scarred from countless battles, and his breath steamed in the cold air with slow, deliberate rhythm. He was not surprised. He was not startled. He was reclaiming his den. The sound he emitted wasn't quite a growl. It was a low, resonant chuff, punctuated by clicks of the jaw that echoed through the chamber. To Ice Age humans, this sound carried a meaning older than any spoken language. You are in my home. The Neanderthals reacted instantly. Spears rose. The strongest adults took the front. Children were ushered behind the protective wall of bodies. Every muscle tightened. They knew running was impossible. They also knew that confronting a pack in an enclosed space reduced their already slim chances of survival. But they had no choice left. The hyenas circled, assessing the distance, gauging the strength of the intruders. They recognized the spears, not as tools but as threats. These animals had met humans before. They had seen their kind fight with coordinated movements, with bravery and desperation. But they had also seen humans fail. They had learned that a single mistake could turn victory into slaughter. The storm outside intensified, sealing off the exit with wind and snow, and the cave grew darker as the torchlight struggled against the drafts. The Neanderthals' shadows danced wildly across the red-stained walls, blending with the flickers of muscle beneath the hyenas' coats. Then something shifted, a noise deeper inside the cave. Stone sliding across stone. Not an echo, not wind, something alive. As the humans turned their heads, trying to locate the sound, the male hyena lunged forward with incredible speed, not to attack, but to test. The impact of his advance sent a gust of air rushing through the cave, bending the torch flame sideways. A spear jabbed his shoulder, sinking shallowly into muscle. He recoiled, but not in fear, in calculation. The wound told him everything he needed to know. The humans could hurt him, but not kill quickly. From deeper within the cave, new shapes appeared. More hyenas, emerging like ghosts from the back chambers. The humans had unknowingly entered the heart of a fully established den, complete with resting adults, storage remains, and the most dangerous element of all, cubs. This was not just a shelter, it was a fortress, and they were intruders surrounded in every direction. The Neanderthals rearranged their formation, pressing deeper into the inner wall to avoid being flanked. Their eyes darted from entrance to darkness, trying to anticipate attacks. But this was the hyena's world: tight spaces, shifting shadows, and a network of tunnels etched by generations of scavengers. The giant hyena pack closed in, step by deliberate step. The massacre of the Red Cave had begun long before the first blow was struck. It began the moment the humans set foot inside a place ruled by predators whose strength matched their hunger, and whose home they had dared to enter. The storm outside deepened until the world beyond the entrance was nothing but a wall of white noise and violent wind. Inside the cave, however, the tension thickened into something heavier than silence, something alive that pulsed between the bodies of predators and humans. The Neanderthals were trapped in a place that stripped them of every advantage the open landscape usually granted. Their vision narrowed, their escape evaporated. Their senses sharpened to painful clarity, focusing on every breath, every shift of weight, every glint in the eyes of the hyenas encircling them. The giant hyenas moved with a confidence built by countless past victories. Their world revolved around dens like this one, deep, narrow chambers where their strength, endurance, and bone-crushing jaws rendered them nearly unstoppable. They had raised generations within these walls, dragged carcasses through the tunnels, crushed the bones of mammoths, bison, horses, and even other predators. Their paws left grooves in the floor soft enough to record years of dominance. Every curve of the stone, every ridge in the cave ceiling, every pocket of darkness was familiar to them. To the Neanderthals, this maze-like interior was a trap designed by nature against them. They pressed their backs to the red stone, instinctively aligning themselves into a semicircle. This formation wasn't planned. It was the product of hundreds of thousands of years of confronting threats too close for comfort. They positioned the strongest adults at the edges, forming a protective wall around the juveniles, and the two children trembling behind them. Their spears, fire-hardened and tipped with carefully sharpened points, were the only tools standing between survival and annihilation. These weapons were formidable in open terrain, but in the cave's confined space, the spears felt too long, too rigid, too slow. Still, they were their only hope. A low growl reverberated from the back of the chamber. The hyenas responded instantly, tightening the ring. Their bodies shifted in unison, muscles rippling beneath thick fur. Their breath rose in steaming plumes in the cold air. Their eyes reflected the flickering torchlight with a cold, intelligent calculation. These were not mindless beasts. They were apex predators engineered by evolution to assess threats and dismantle them one strike at a time. The male hyena took the lead, his massive head tilted slightly as he studied the Neanderthals' defensive posture. He had seen humans before, some standing their ground bravely, others fleeing in panic. He knew the spears were dangerous. He knew the fire could burn. But he also knew that numbers favored his kind, and the cave turned every advantage toward him. He stepped forward with deliberate weight, crunching fragments of bone beneath his paws. Each crack echoed along the walls like the snapping of branches in a dead forest. The Neanderthals inhaled sharply, their bodies tightening as one. No one moved. Movement at the wrong moment could have triggered a full attack. For a long breath, the male hyena held the entire cave suspended in stillness. The storm outside roared, but inside, time nearly stopped. Then one of the juveniles behind the line made a small, involuntary sound, a startled whimper at the sight of another pair of eyes emerging from the side tunnel. That sound, faint and brief though it was, broke the tension like splintered ice. The male hyena launched forward. The attack came with terrifying speed. He moved in a blur of fur, muscle, and momentum, jaws open wide. The Neanderthal adult closest to him thrust his spear instinctively, driving the point into the creature's thick shoulder. The impact reverberated through the wooden shaft and slammed up the hunter's arm. Blood erupted in a dark spray, but the wound only enraged the beast. The male twisted violently, snapping the spear shaft in half with sheer force. The splintered wood flew across the cave, clattering against the walls. The hyena retreated a single step, not in fear but to reassess. The humans now understood exactly how dangerous this creature was. One blow had shattered a weapon made for hunting animals twice its size. The females spread out, exploiting the broken formation. They moved toward the edges where the defensive semicircle thinned. Neanderthals reacted quickly, adjusting positions, shifting weight, calculating the angle of attack. Their brains, optimized for spatial awareness in tight spaces, tracked every movement of the hyena's paws, every twitch of their tails. The female on the right lunged first. Her attack was a feint, fast enough to draw a response but not intended to connect. The spear held by the adult guarding that side jabbed forward, meeting nothing but air. The hyena twisted aside effortlessly and retreated before the point came close. But the feint had a purpose: to force the humans into a predictable reaction. The second female attacked the moment the spear was out of position. She barreled forward with jaws wide open, her teeth clamped onto the spear shaft just below the point. The Neanderthal holding it felt his arms jerk violently, as if pulled by a powerful current. He dug his heels into the ground, muscles straining, but the hyena's strength was overwhelming. She twisted her head sharply, using the leverage of her entire body to wrench the weapon from his grip. It clattered to the floor. Before he could reclaim it, she crushed the tip beneath her paw with a sickening crack. 2 spears lost within seconds. The humans were rapidly losing the only resources that offered them distance and control. The male hyena advanced again, ignoring the bleeding wound on his shoulder. The injury only intensified his determination. He paced slowly, forcing the Neanderthals backward, compressing them into a tighter cluster. The closer they were to the wall, the fewer escape routes they had, and the easier it became for the pack to isolate a victim. The humans responded with a shift in strategy. They shortened their spears, gripping them closer to the tips to mimic thrusting knives. This adaptation allowed for quicker, shorter strikes. Neanderthals were exceptionally strong in close-range combat, able to deliver blows that modern humans would struggle to match. Their bodies were built for explosive bursts of power, their arms thick with dense muscle, their chests broad enough to stabilize rapid upper body movements. In a confined space, these strengths became their primary weapon, and they were about to need every ounce of it. A flash of movement erupted from the left, a juvenile hyena darting from the deeper chamber, hoping to catch the humans off guard. But one of the Neanderthal adults reacted instantly. He pivoted with astonishing speed, swinging his shortened spear upward. The point caught the young hyena in the jaw, slicing through the soft tissue beneath the mouth and driving the animal backward. The juvenile screeched and retreated, leaving a trail of blood on the cave floor. The pack responded with fury. The male roared, a deep, resonant sound that reverberated through the stone. The female surged forward in unison. The humans braced for impact. What followed was a blur of movement, claws scraping rock, spears thrusting in rapid succession, blood scattering in the red-lit chamber, bodies colliding with bone-crushing force. A female clamped her jaws around a hunter's leg, pulling him down. The group reacted instantly. 2 spears struck her flank, blood pouring from the wounds. She released her grip with a snarl, backing away, limping but far from defeated. The injured hunter struggled to stand, pain shooting through his leg as he braced against the wall, but there was no time to recover. The pack surged again. One of the children cried out, sharp, frightened, high-pitched. The sound sent a shockwave through the group. Every adult shifted positions, forming a tighter wall around the young ones. Their movements were instinctive, protective, and rooted in the species-wide drive to preserve the next generation. The hyenas sensed this vulnerability immediately. Their eyes tracked the smallest bodies like predators reading weakness. But the Neanderthals would die before they allowed the pack near them. The male hyena lunged again, making a direct attempt to break the circle. His jaws snapped inches from an adult's face, teeth clashing against a spear shaft. The Neanderthal countered with a brutal shove, using the full weight of his body to push the beast backward. But the male was relentless. He twisted, lunged again, driven by instinct, hunger, and territorial fury. Every heartbeat filled the cave with more heat, more noise, more desperation. The torch flickered violently, sending shadows racing across the walls. Red light reflected off blood pooling on the floor, giving the cave an eerie glow that blended with the mineral-stained stone. This was no longer a standoff. It was the first stage of a prolonged battle, inside a labyrinth owned by a predator evolved to command it. The Neanderthals had survived the initial onslaught, but the pack was far from finished. The hyenas had more strength to unleash, more tactics to attempt, and more reinforcements waiting in the tunnels behind them. And as the storm sealed off the outside world, The cave became a closed arena, a place where only one species would emerge alive. As the moments inside the cave stretched into a relentless test of endurance, the atmosphere thickened with heat, breath, blood, and the growing weight of exhaustion. Every movement from both species carved deeper lines into the outcome of a conflict neither side had chosen willingly, but now had no escape from. The Neanderthals felt the sting of fresh wounds growing heavier with each passing second. Yet their determination hardened further, rooted in a survival instinct refined over hundreds of thousands of years. The hyenas, too, carried injuries that would have halted lesser predators. But these giants were built for endurance, as much as for aggression, their bodies able to endure pain in ways that defied comparison to modern species. The storm outside continued to roar, sealing off the entrance with layers of ice and wind so dense that even sound struggled to penetrate. Inside, the entire world shrank to the confines of stone, flickering firelight, and the narrowing space between survival and annihilation. The male hyena moved first, stepping over broken bone fragments that cracked beneath his massive paws, his breath bursting in clouds of steam. Blood ran in thin lines down his injured shoulder, but there was no hesitation in his posture. His instincts told him that endurance alone would decide the confrontation. He began a slow, circling pattern, forcing the Neanderthals to shift with him, tightening their formation until the youngest members were nearly pressed against the far wall. The adults compensated, adjusting the angles of their shortened spears, recalibrating their stance to maintain a defensive arc that still allowed thrusts without striking one another. This level of coordination came not from verbal communication, but from innate spatial awareness and the seamless cooperation characteristic of their species. The hyena pack sensed the subtle change. One of the females limped from the previous wounds but continued to circle, her growl deepening as she tested the boundaries of the human's movements. Another hovered near a tunnel opening, waiting for an opportunity to flank the group and fracture their unity. For the humans, the critical challenge now was managing fatigue. Their muscles were built for explosive power, but prolonged effort began to take its toll. The damp air inside the cave thickened with smoke from the lone torch, irritating eyes and lungs. Each breath tasted of iron and earth. Each step risked slipping on blood-slick stone. Yet no one faltered. The awareness that the children behind them depended entirely on their resilience pushed every adult beyond natural limits. The next exchange erupted without warning. One of the females lunged again, and this time she aimed not for the spears but for the hunter protecting the left edge of the formation. She launched her full weight toward his torso, jaws snapping toward his ribs. The Neanderthal reacted in a fraction of a second, twisting his body and driving his shortened spear directly upward. The point sliced into the hyena's throat. A spray of blood arced through the air as the animal recoiled violently. She staggered backward, attempting to regain footing, but the wound was severe. The sound of her labored breathing echoed through the chamber as she collapsed, her legs folding beneath her. Her death sent a shock through the pack. The male growled deeply, the sound vibrating through the stone and into the bones of everyone present. The remaining female tensed, shifting her stance. Even the juvenile hiding deeper in the cave let out a distressed, high-pitched cry. The humans recognized the significance immediately. They had struck a critical blow. For a heartbeat, the hyenas hesitated, and that small hesitation allowed the Neanderthals to adjust, reposition, and prepare. But just as quickly as the hesitation appeared, it vanished. The male surged forward with renewed ferocity, enraged by the loss of a pack member and driven by instinct to end the threat decisively. He crashed into the defensive line with such force that one hunter was thrown against the wall. Only the combined efforts of two others kept the hyena from reaching the opening in their formation. Spears thrust repeatedly, cutting through fur and skin, but the animal's momentum was overwhelming. The cave filled with the sounds of impact, wood striking bone, claws scraping stone, guttural growls blending with the heavy breathing of the humans. In the chaos, the torch nearly fell, its flame dancing dangerously close to the blood on the ground. One of the adults caught it at the last second, gripping it tightly. Fire had always been humanity's oldest ally, and in this moment, it became a weapon of desperation. The hunter raised the torch high and thrust it toward the male's face. Flames rolled in a bright arc, illuminating the cave with a sudden burst of light. The hyena recoiled instinctively, eyes narrowing as heat washed over him. Fire disrupted his senses in a way that weapons alone could not. The humans recognized this shift instantly. The flame forced the beast to retreat several steps, giving the group room to breathe for the first time since entering the den. But fire alone could not decide the outcome. The torch sputtered as blood dripped across the handle and damp air pressed against the flame. The Neanderthals knew it would not last forever. They needed to use every second the temporary advantage provided. With renewed determination, the adults closed ranks again, tightening their grip on the remaining weapons. Their chest muscles burned, their arms trembled from the strain of repeated impacts, yet their expressions hardened. They refused to yield. The male paced, frustrated, evaluating the flame, the spacing of the humans, and the remains of his fallen companion. He understood fire as both danger and opportunity. He had seen smaller fires before, grass burning during storms, stray embers from lightning strikes, but never fire held with such precision. The pack had faced humans in the open plains many times, but never inside a cave that balanced the odds so precariously. The remaining female began a new tactic, creeping toward the outer edge of the humans' formation. Not with a forward charge, but with slow, deliberate steps. Her eyes tracked the children again. Even injured, she understood instinctively that targeting the vulnerable would break the adult's rhythm. The humans sensed her intention. Two adults shifted simultaneously, blocking her direct path. Their bodies became a living shield, their movements precise and synchronized. This raised the humans' chances of survival, but also forced them into a tighter, more vulnerable shape. The male recognized this immediately. He charged again. This time, he aimed low, targeting the legs of the humans rather than their upper bodies. His shoulder slammed into one of the hunters, lifting him off the ground. The impact smashed the man against the cave wall, knocking the wind from his lungs. The hyena attempted to drag him down, jaws snapping at the air around his thigh, but another hunter rammed his spear into the beast's side, driving him back several steps. The injured hunter struggled to regain his footing. Pain radiated through his hip and ribs, but he forced himself upright, refusing to allow the pack to sense weakness. Blood dripped down his arm, collecting at his fingertips, but his grip on the broken spear remained firm. The human's ability to withstand pain astonished the hyenas. Their bodies, dense with muscle and compact bone, allowed them to absorb impacts that would have crippled other creatures. Their endurance was not infinite, but their willpower was extraordinary. The cave light dimmed as the torch weakened, its flame shrinking into a small, flickering core. Shadows lengthened, stretching across the walls like reaching claws. Every movement became harder to track. The hyenas shifted toward the edges of the chamber again, taking advantage of the growing darkness. The humans braced for another attack, knowing their reaction time would be compromised. The male lunged first, emerging from the shadows like a living avalanche of fur and muscle. But this time, the humans anticipated the angle. They moved as one, thrusting their remaining spears simultaneously, creating a barrier of sharp points. Two of the weapons pierced the male's chest. The beast roared, the sound echoing through the cave like thunder. He stumbled but refused to fall. His massive jaws snapped repeatedly, biting into a spear shaft and splintering it with terrifying ease. Blood poured from his wounds, pooling beneath him, soaking into the red-stained stones of the den. The remaining female attempted a flanking attack to support him, but one of the hunters intercepted her with a swing of the torch. The flame touched her fur, and she recoiled instantly, panic overtaking instinct. Fire had always been the great equalizer in the natural world, turning predators into prey with a single spark. The female retreated deeper into the tunnel, disappearing into the darkness. The male, however, refused to retreat. His legs trembled, his breaths came in ragged bursts, yet he continued forward, driven by dominance, by survival, by loyalty to his pack. The humans tightened formation again. They advanced in small, careful steps, pushing the wounded beast backward. Every movement was calculated to avoid slipping on blood or stepping into the territory of the retreating female. The torch flickered again, dimming even further. The humans knew the flame would die soon. They needed to finish the fight before darkness engulfed them completely. The male growled, a final resounding sound that filled the chamber with raw defiance. Then he lunged. The humans struck together, driving their spears forward in a unified surge of strength. The points buried deep. The beast collapsed at last, his massive weight slamming into the cave floor, shaking the stone beneath them. Silence returned slowly, spreading through the den like a settling mist. The storm outside continued to rage, but inside the cave, the immediate threat had ended. The Neanderthals stood motionless for several long breaths, waiting, listening, ensuring no other predator lurked in the darkness. The remaining female stayed hidden in the tunnel, unwilling to challenge the humans after witnessing the fall of her leader. The humans did not pursue her. Their only goal now was survival. They gathered the children, examined their own wounds, and prepared for the difficult hours ahead. The victory came at a heavy cost, but it marked a turning point. For the first time since entering the cave, the possibility of seeing daylight again felt real. The fall of the dominant male shifted the cave's atmosphere in a way that was almost physical, like a pressure lifting just enough to allow the Neanderthals to breathe, yet not enough to grant true relief. The storm still raged outside, sealing the entrance beneath a sheet of ice and snow, and the surviving female hyena had retreated deeper into the tunnels where the narrow passages and branching chambers created a maze of uncertainty. The humans stood in the dim light of the dying torch, surrounded by blood-soaked stone and the heavy stillness that follows violence. Their bodies trembled from exhaustion, adrenaline fading slowly into the ache of bruises, cuts, and deep muscular fatigue. The torch flickered weakly, its light shrinking with every passing second. Yet even in the dimness, the environment around them revealed new information. The walls bore mineral streaks of iron oxide, deep red bands that looked like ancient wounds carved into the earth itself. The ground beneath their feet felt uneven, littered with broken bones of various sizes and species. Some were fresh, some brittle with age, but all bore clear signs of the den's long history as a bone processing chamber. Thick bite marks spiraled across femurs and rib bones, each indentation a signature of the hyena's extreme bite force. The humans recognized these patterns instinctively. They had seen them scattered across the plains before, but never in such concentration. This cave was not merely a refuge for predators, but a long-term kill site, a place where carcasses had been dragged, stripped, and cracked open for generations. The air carried a dense metallic scent, a mix of blood, damp stone, and the lingering musk of the predators. The Neanderthals' enhanced olfactory senses registered every nuance, helping them interpret how recently certain bones had been left and which tunnels were still warm with the scent of living animals. Their ability to read such cues had always been essential for survival, especially when navigating territories shared with large predators. Now that skill became even more vital. The surviving female could attack at any moment, or she might have retreated to protect the juvenile deeper inside. The pack's family dynamics were complex. Loyalty often outweighed hunger, and a wounded group was unpredictable. The humans could not assume safety simply because the male had fallen. The storm outside left them with only two choices: remain in the main chamber and risk another assault, or move deeper in search of a secondary exit. They studied the cave's branching shadows carefully. Each tunnel varied slightly in temperature and airflow. One passage exhaled warm, stagnant air, suggesting deeper chambers but no escape. Another carried a faint drift of colder wind, indicating a potential connection to the outside. A third opening emitted a sharp, sour scent, fresh hyena odor, strong enough to warn them immediately. They avoided that one. Before moving, the adults checked the injured among them. One hunter's leg bore deep puncture wounds from the female's earlier attack. The bleeding had slowed, but the pain made every step difficult. Another had fractured ribs from being slammed into the wall. They compensated by arranging their formation, the strongest positioned on the edges, the wounded protected in the center along with the children. Adaptation in the face of changing conditions had always been their greatest strength, and every movement reinforced their cohesion as a group. The torch sputtered again, shrinking into a small, glowing ember. Shadows surged along the cave walls like living creatures. The humans knew they had little time before total darkness swallowed everything. They began to move toward the tunnel with the faint cold draft. The floor sloped downward slightly, and the further they walked, the more they encountered evidence of long-dead animals. Bones had accumulated in layered deposits, forming compact piles that spoke to years of cyclical occupation. Some bones displayed gnaw marks from juvenile teeth, smaller, less deep impressions with uneven spacing. Others bore the crushing signatures of adults. Scattered among them lay fragments of skulls belonging to deer, horses, bison, even other hyenas. The humans stepped carefully, understanding that a single misstep could alert the surviving predators. Every sound echoed deeper than expected. The cave amplified even the faintest exhale, carrying vibrations along the stone in unpredictable patterns. Their bodies adjusted instinctively, breathing shallower, walking on the edges of their feet, lowering their center of gravity. The temperature dropped further as they advanced. The mineral surfaces glistened with condensed moisture, forming tiny beads that reflected the ember's faint glow. The cold intensified the throbbing in their wounds, stiffening their muscles, but it also provided important information. They were moving toward a chamber connected to a colder pocket of air, possibly near a secondary exit. The tunnel suddenly widened into a chamber larger than the previous one. Here the ceiling vaulted higher, forming natural arches shaped by millennia of dripping water carving paths through the limestone. Stalactites hung like frozen spears. The ground, however, was far more unsettling. Interwoven among the bones were scratches, deep parallel grooves created not by tools but by claws. The arrangement of these marks revealed territorial patterns. The male had likely used this chamber as a lookout position, reinforcing it as part of the pack's territory. The humans observed the distribution of bones and markings, building a silent mental map of the hyena's behavior. They realized that these predators did not rely solely on brute force, but also used structured spatial awareness. The den was organized in zones, feeding areas, resting pockets, nesting tunnels, lookout chambers. This revealed intelligence and a level of environmental mastery that demanded respect. The humans continued moving, aware that the surviving female could be watching them from any of the dark recesses. Their eyes scanned constantly, adjusting to slight variations in light. Their pupils dilated to maximize the faint glow from the ember, and their brains processed subtle differences in shadow depth and movement. One of the hunters noticed something unusual in a corner of the chamber. A collection of stones arranged in a pattern that did not resemble natural deposition or animal behavior. The stones formed a semicircle with a distinct gap at the center. Their surfaces bore soot stains, and small fragments of charred wood lay embedded in the sediment. The meaning was unmistakable. Another group, possibly humans, possibly an earlier population, had once lit fires here. The stones indicated a hearth structure, intentional, deliberate, human-made. This was evidence of occupation far older than anything encountered at the cave entrance. The Neanderthals knelt, running their hands across the stones, feeling the texture and age. The sediment layering suggested the hearth had not been used for hundreds, maybe thousands of winters. The discovery carried weight. It meant the cave had once provided safety rather than danger. It meant others like them had once sat around a fire here, protected by the same stone walls that now threatened their lives. But it also meant something else. The hyenas had taken over a place once inhabited by humans, reinforcing that predator and prey often coexisted within overlapping territories. For a species shaped by the Pleistocene's brutal cycles of competition, this realization deepened the urgency of their situation. They needed to reclaim agency inside the cave. They could not wait for the surviving female to strike again. They needed fire. Without it, they were nearly blind. With the old hearth discovered, they searched for any remaining fuel. Though nearly all organic material had decayed long ago, they found several pieces of dried root tangled beneath older debris, just enough to feed a flame. With swift coordination, one adult placed the ember carefully among the roots, shielding it from drafts with cupped hands. Another blew steadily, using controlled breath to coax the ember back to life. Thin smoke spiraled upward. A soft glow emerged. Then a flicker. Then a flame. The fire grew slowly, illuminating the chamber with warm light and pushing back the oppressive darkness. Shadows retreated into the tunnels, and for the first time since entering the cave, the humans felt the faint presence of hope. But the light also revealed something they had not noticed earlier. In the far corner of the chamber lay a partially buried pile of bones distinct from the others. These bones were arranged, not scattered, and several bore deliberate markings, cut marks, not bite marks. They were arranged in parallel lines, precise and angled. This was evidence of butchering, not feeding by predators. And among the bones were fragments of stone tools, flakes of flint, a broken scraper, and what remained of a hand axe. The humans recognized these instantly. These tools were crafted by their own kind. Some of the bones bore human morphology. The realization was chilling. Whether by conflict, misfortune, or entrapment, another group of Neanderthals had once died here. The cave had swallowed them long before the present storm sealed its entrance. This place was not merely a den. It was a place where histories overlapped, where generations of predators and humans had faced the same dangers, made the same decisions, and left traces for the next to interpret. The firelight revealed something else, a small opening near the chamber ceiling, partly obscured by mineral deposits. A faint draft flowed through it, cold, steady, and promising an exit. It was narrow, steep, and likely difficult to climb, but it extended upward toward the outer world. The humans approached slowly, analyzing the feasibility of escape. The youngest and smallest could fit easily, but the adults would have to force their bodies through the tight passage. Injuries complicated the task, but the instinct to survive superseded pain. As they prepared to ascend, a sound echoed from the tunnel behind them. A soft, steady growl. The surviving female hyena had returned. This time she was alone, cornered by instinct, grief, and desperation. She had seen the humans build fire again. She had recognized the shift in power, and now she needed to decide whether to defend the den or preserve her own life. The humans tightened formation one last time. The flame grew brighter. The chamber shrank into a battleground once more, but this time the advantage had shifted, and the path to escape was finally within reach. The growl that echoed through the chamber vibrated through the stone like a deep pulse, a reminder that the last confrontation had not yet come to an end. The surviving female hyena stepped into the faint glow of the renewed fire, her fur streaked with blood, her movements slow but deliberate, her eyes fixed on the humans who were now preparing to escape through the narrow opening in the ceiling. The storm outside still sealed the main entrance, trapping wind and ice against the outer walls, turning the world beyond into an impenetrable barrier that would not yield until daylight warmed the land. Inside, however, the air shifted with tension so dense it felt like gravity itself had thickened. The Neanderthals tightened their formation instinctively, arranging themselves with the younger members and injured positioned closest to the steep, narrow passage leading upward. Their bodies remained tense yet controlled, shaped by a lifetime of adapting to danger through unity rather than panic. The female hyena advanced slowly, circling the perimeter of the chamber with cautious precision. She was not driven solely by hunger, but by a complex mixture of instinctual loyalty to her fallen pack, territorial defense, and fear of losing the den that had sheltered generations before her. Her movements revealed a predatory mind calculating every angle, seeking vulnerabilities in the human's new defensive stance. The fire's glow reflected in her eyes, revealing both pain and determination. The humans tracked her movements with synchronized focus, reading her intentions through subtle shifts in her posture. They understood from experience that predators behave differently when cornered. A wounded animal could become either dangerously reckless or unexpectedly cautious. This hyena showed neither panic nor retreat, only a steady, methodical approach shaped by years of navigating conflicts inside the narrow confines of the den. She paused near the ancient hearthstones, lowering her head as if scenting the lingering traces of prey, long gone. Then her gaze snapped back toward the humans, and she released a deeper growl that reverberated through the chamber's mineral-coated walls. The sound triggered instinctive responses in the Neanderthals. Heart rates increased, muscles tightened, breathing slowed into controlled rhythm. They braced for the inevitable. One adult stepped forward with the firebrand, angling the flame low and outward. Fire had shifted the balance of power earlier, and its presence now remained the strongest deterrent they possessed. The hyena's ears flicked back, and she hesitated for a moment, but she did not retreat fully. Instead, she shifted to the right, attempting to approach from an angle where the humans were more tightly compressed by the rising slope of the escape passage. The humans adjusted instantly, sliding their formation sideways without breaking cohesion. Their bodies moved like interlocking pieces of a living mechanism, compensating for each other's injuries and weaknesses, maintaining a unified front. Their breath fogged into the cold air in synchronized bursts, creating ghostly vapor that drifted upward into the rocky ceiling. The hyena paused again, sensing that the humans were not breaking, not scattering, not opening the gap she needed. Her growl deepened, vibrating in her chest. The humans stepped back inch by inch, making space for one of the juveniles to climb onto the ledge beneath the narrow opening. The incline was steep and slick with a thin layer of moisture, but the child gripped the stone with practiced ease. Their bodies, compact and powerful, allowed them to climb in ways modern humans could not. As the child disappeared into the ascending passage, the flame flickered violently in a draft, casting wild, distorted shadows across the walls. The hyena reacted to the sudden movement, lunging forward with surprising speed given her injuries. Her jaws snapped inches from the leg of the nearest adult. The human countered with a thrust of a sharp, broken spear, striking the hyena's muzzle. Blood sprayed in a thin arc, and she recoiled with a pained snarl that filled the chamber with sharp echoes. The humans pressed their advantage, stepping in unison to shield the next child climbing the ledge. The female paced rapidly now, wounded but refusing to concede the den. She circled once more, this time approaching from the left where the ground dipped into a shallow depression filled with scattered bone fragments. Her paws crunched through them loudly, sending cracks reverberating across the curved stone walls. The sound triggered memories in the humans. These were the same bones from earlier generations of prey, many bearing the unmistakable spiral fractures caused by hyena jaws used to access marrow. They understood deeply now how ancient this struggle was, how many times the cave had witnessed conflict between species. The hyena feinted to the right, then lunged left, aiming at a hunter partially restricted by rib injuries. Her jaws snapped with bone-crushing force, but an adult beside him struck her shoulder with a heavy blow from a stone fragment. She stumbled, regained footing, and retreated toward the shadows. The humans did not chase. Their goal was not dominance, but survival. Another juvenile climbed the ledge, then one of the wounded adults. Each ascent took strength, precision, and trust that the stone would hold. The female hyena paced beneath them, watching, trying to judge how close they were to escape. She released a sharp, frustrated bark-like growl, her breath steaming in the cold chamber. The humans sensed a shift in her posture. The desperation in her movements grew more pronounced. Her pack was gone. The den had been invaded. Instinct drove her toward a final attempt to reclaim her territory. She crouched low, muscles tensing beneath her blood-matted fur. The humans braced themselves, raising the firebrand and remaining weapons. Then she lunged with all the strength left in her body. The collision was brutal. She slammed into the defensive line, knocking one hunter backward. The firebrand nearly fell. Claws scraped against stone and skin. The hyena's jaws clamped onto the shaft of a spear, splintering it instantly. The humans responded with coordinated strikes. A stone fragment smashed against her rib. A sharpened piece of bone stabbed into her flank. Fire seared her fur. She twisted violently, snapping her jaws in every direction, but her movements slowed with each passing second as blood loss and exhaustion overtook her. The humans pressed forward together, driving her back step by step until her legs trembled and her body lowered unwillingly to the stone floor. She attempted one last growl, a final echo of defiance, but her strength failed. Her body slumped into the sediment-rich ground of the chamber that had once been her sanctuary. Silence spread through the cave gradually, replacing the frantic echoes of conflict with the steady crackling of the small fire. The humans stood in place without moving, listening for any sound from deeper tunnels. None came. The den had finally fallen silent. With the last threat gone, they turned their attention once more to escape. The fire provided a few more moments of light, enough for the remaining adults to climb toward the narrow passage where the juveniles already waited. The ascent was slow, demanding strength from limbs that trembled from fatigue and blood loss. The stone walls scraped their bodies as they pulled themselves upward through the tight gap. The cold draft intensified as they climbed, signaling that the opening was nearing the outside. When the first adult emerged from the upper exit, they were met with a world still encased in ice and wind. But the storm had weakened just enough for visibility to return. The sky above glowed with diffuse gray light. Snow drifted in swirling sheets across the ridge. The cold bit into their exposed skin, but the openness of the landscape offered a freedom that the confines of the cave had nearly stolen from them. One by one, the group emerged, bruised, bloodied, exhausted, but alive. They regrouped on a narrow ledge overlooking the valley below. The storm clouds began to dissipate, revealing glimpses of distant peaks and frozen plains stretching into the horizon. They breathed deeply, filling their lungs with cold, clean air free of the metallic tang and suffocating heat of the cave. Their survival had depended not on chance, but on cooperation, resilience, and an extraordinary ability to adapt to an environment that continuously tested the limits of endurance. The den behind them, still echoing with the memory of roars and desperate struggle, would continue to exist long after their footprints faded from the snow. Future predators would reclaim it. Future storms would seal it. Perhaps future humans would discover its secrets again. As the Neanderthals descended the ridge, their silhouettes merged with the pale landscape, carrying with them the scars of the battle and the knowledge that survival demanded constant movement, constant vigilance, constant unity. The storm passed, but the world remained harsh, unpredictable, and filled with ancient rhythms that shaped every life across the Pleistocene. And though the cave grew silent once more, the memory of the night when humans and predators clashed in the red darkness would remain etched into the stone for generations. Don't forget to subscribe. It really supports the channel and helps us bring you more great stories.